really excited for today's topic of conversation around tooling and really something that I think is easy to forget about. I think it's something that we need to maybe put a little bit more time into. So as we get kicked off here, there's you can see a few comments that we have muted your microphones. We've got the chat, and I'll kind of go through that in the ground rules here. As far as the roundtable itself, and maybe let's start with that. We want to really thank everybody for their participation, for really their support with all of these roundtables. They seem to really get a lot of attention and reach a lot of people. And today is all about tools and how we create programs to retain and recruit technicians. We're also going to dive into insurance as we try to protect our teams from potential disaster. I've got a story about a shop that I had visited that had gone through that disaster. It's not a fun thing to go through. They actually went through a fire, but we're excited to have you back with us this month, and really hope that we're able to use this hour to provide a lot of value to you. Before we get started, let's take I guess do a little bit of housekeeping here. Sorry, my screen is being a little goofy. Let me get back over here. Why is this not going? Sorry about that. There we go. Sorry. So the housekeeping. So if you want to chat, use the chat functionality. We always love hearing what people have to say. We want to hear from you, best practices, different questions that you might have. Feel free to use the chat. If you do have a question for the panelists, who I'll introduce here in just a second, please use the Q&A. That is actually the easiest way for us to be able to get to your question and be able to answer it. So, and as you see at the top, all of our sessions are being recorded, and we'll send it out to everybody after the fact. With that, why don't we bring on our panelists and do some quick introductions. They're joining us right now. We've got Mark Wilson, who is my business partner here at WrenchWay, has a lot of really great background on this from, I guess, the accounting standpoint, a lot getting more of the industry side. Travis Morates, thank you for joining us today. Travis, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Travis Morates. Been part of Kendall Auto Group for 10 years now, and I started my career off actually detailing cars at the Toyota location here in Bend, Oregon, and I worked my way up through changing oil to be a service advisor, and I got the chance to get the promotion to be a service manager. Now I'm a service drive manager at the Bend Ford location.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, Travis.
You're welcome.
Scott Saxton, Mr. Scott Saxton from Sonic Tools. Always a pleasure to have you on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jay. Thank you.
Good. Tell us a little bit about yourself as far as what you do at Sonic Tools.
Okay. Again, my name is Scott Saxton. I am the Director of Sales for North America, so Mexico, US, Canada, and directly over automotive, education, aviation. We have another Director of Sales who is over manufacturing and EV. So last year, we basically have expanded in so much business into the EV manufacturing side that we have now separated that segment. But I manage the automotive, education, and aviation side of the company from a sales standpoint.
And one cool thing that I think we'll get out of this roundtable is are some of the unique things that the airline industry is doing that might be applicable to what we're doing here on the automotive and diesel sides. I think there's some things to learn there just from a standpoint that they do things a little bit differently. So looking forward to this conversation. I think there's a lot of great insight to be had out of this. I know we've had questions I've had questions from shops just asking how to put together a tool program. And I think those basic things we can talk about today hopefully give you some take home, some things that you can actually take back to your shops and actually be able to implement. So Scott, I want to start off the roundtable with you, and I want to talk about the why behind a tool program and really what the benefits are. There's some obvious benefits, but maybe there's some things that we haven't thought about. But why should a shop actually be sitting down and thinking about putting together a tool program for their technicians?
Wow, that's a good question. I think the main reason would be because of debt mitigation for technician, and the I guess the positive byproduct of what's happening right now with the shortage of technicians is that the dealerships, aviation, automotive, all these industries are having to rethink what's acceptable. And what's been acceptable is that the technician invests in the tools and the tools go with the technician. And now we're starting to see a change and a shift in all the industries that technicians are working in, where it now makes sense for dealerships, for airlines, for independent shops to start purchasing those tools as an incentive to get in new technicians, and two, as a retention piece to keep them there. You and I we've talked about this in the past, where mechanics should have their own tools. But the thought of a mechanic having to purchase tools to go do a job for a dealership is something that it's never really made sense to me. And I have friends who went that route out of high school, and a lot of them have anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000 in tools that they purchase. So I think the dealership should be doing that.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I think it's because it's kind of a little bit of a shift. Everybody's so used to buying tools, and I think as we walk through the programs, maybe we give ideas on ways to be able to have the shop provide the tools, and maybe even if they're not providing the tools, compensating the technician for actually getting the tools. So Travis, I'll go to you next. Is this something you guys have had talks about internally, as the shortage of talent gets obviously it's making our lives more difficult, right? So being able to find that significant advantage, is it worthy of that conversation, and have you guys had those conversations?
Yes and no. We have had, we do have a tool program for our some technicians. It kind of all depends on who the applicant is and what the situation is. But I mean, if you're a very experienced technicians, we kind of assume and almost expect to have, for you to have your own tools if you're an experienced technician. But if we have a technician that is just coming out of school, or with Ford, they have what's called the asset program, which is a 2-year program that it actually is a pretty cool program. It's 2 years, and you kind of split your time between going to college and working actually at the dealership. And by the time you're done with it, you're pretty much fully certified in Ford. And, that takes a lot of commitment for both the student and the dealership, because there's a lot of trust that they're going to do good in school, and then they're going to do good. There's a lot of investment that goes into that particular person. And so, people like that, or, if you have someone coming out of a UTI, or, your local college, and you're going to make them, either intern tech, or just kind of start off, and they need tools to kind of start their way off. Last thing they need to do is hop on a tool truck and buy, $50,000 worth of Snap-on or Cornwell. That's just starting their career off in the wrong path. So if that and we don't do it every single time, it has to be the right person. But the program that we have is pretty much, if it is the right person, then what we'll do is find out what they need from all of our senior techs, depending on what brand you are. And with that, they would, pretty much write us down a list that's going to, all the tools that particular person needs for the next 4 to 5 years. And with that, then we'll do some shopping around, try to find, starter kits, or try to find ways that, you can have a good set of tools that's going to be perfect for a a technician starting off in their career, because they don't need the snap on a Cornwell. And then from there, we'll get that grand total, get with that individual person and say, hey, okay, it's going to be this amount of money. What we're going to do is, over the course of the next year and a half, we're going to deduct this from your paycheck at a 0% interest rate. So dealership's going to buy the tools. They're our tools until you pay them off, and then they're yours. You can do whatever you want. So from that, it kind of teaches that person too that, okay, it kind of gives them a little bit of credibility in a way of, they have to work for it, and, they get to earn it. It kind of gives them a set of accomplishment and almost pride at the end of it when they're paid off, because they're theirs. They worked hard to have those tools. And then by that time, they're like, okay. And Ronald, I'll get to that in just a second. It kind of gives them pride. But off of Ronald's question, if the technician leaves beforehand, there is an addendum in there stating either A, you have the option of paying us outright. So if you've only paid 50% of what that loan is, and you can pay us out for the rest of the money, and then they're your tools. Or B, we take a look at all the tools, do a whole inventory check on it, check and make sure everything is being able to reused all again. And if everything's in good top quality shape and not marked up or whatever the case may be, then we can buy them out and return them their money that they paid towards those tools.
That's interesting. And Scott, you and I had talked about that previously in similar programs where there was that kind of buyback, or almost like if a tech quits, basically they forfeit the remaining money, right? And what Travis is saying, I think you're saying they have the opportunity to go back and kind of be able to reclaim that money.
Yeah, it's because at the end of the day, it's is stealing in a way, right? In our opinion, it's our tools. You're paying towards those tools. So if we get to keep the tools, then you should have the money. That it's kind of like a layaway program in a way, so
yeah,
that's how I look at it.
So Mark, I'm going to bring you into the conversation here. One of the things that I think you and I have had conversations around is the potential of shops just straight up buying tools for their technicians. And I want to kind of ask you about that piece, and maybe what the benefit would be as to doing that versus just doing kind of a loan type of program, or being able to see maybe what the right fit is for a certain style shop. Not every shop's the same, so not everybody's going to have the same ideas there. But any insight into that type of program?
Yeah, or maybe it'd help to just kind of lay out a couple different examples. I mean, you can structure it a million ways, but I think everything falls into probably 3 or 4 categories. One is the category Travis mentioned, where essentially you're providing employees a loan. You're paying up front so they don't have to come up with that money, and it's 0% interest. And that's, definitely a good program, certainly way better than a lot of the shops we see. Other options though, like for instance, I know Scott has some examples, I think, of this, of buying a starter kit outright where the shop will own it. Say it's a $3,000 kit or $4,000, and tie it to the technician staying 3 years or 4 years. In my opinion, that is well worth spending the money and not having the technician repay that. Again, if you tie it to them staying, the shop owns the tools during that time. If they leave, you can put programs in place like Travis says, where maybe the technician can buy them, or they go back to the shop. An advantage for both sides of that, obviously just the money part of it, it's less money that the technician has to pay over time. They're going to be used in the shop, so I think it kind of aligns with the shop maybe should or could be kicking in some of that. But then even from a tax standpoint, if you were to buy them outright for an employee on day one and you give them a $5,000 toolkit, that's $5,000 of income that you should be claiming that they should have on their yearly compensation. Whether you do that or not is, you know, up to you and your accountant, but technically that would be taxable income for them. Versus if you treat it almost like a reimbursement, you pay for the tools. I guess it's not a reimbursement if you just pay for it up front, but the shop pays for it and the shop owns it. Then the shop's depreciating it like any other asset over 3 years, 4 years. And then the time that employee has fulfilled their end of the agreement, meaning they stay for 3 or 4 years, then you can transfer ownership to the employee. Now, at that point, the tools are no longer worth $5,000. They're still value, but they're fully depreciated on the shop's books. You can pretty easily get away with claiming that not as income at all or very little for the technician. So it's kind of a win-win for you and the tech. Now, it does mean the shop has to pay for it, and that's a decision you have to make. But I, again, would argue if that's helping to tie them to stay for 3 years or something like that, it's well worth it. And then the last example I'll give is just giving a yearly allowance, whether it's new tech or someone who's been there a while. I'm not here to tell you what that amount should be. Say it's $2,000 a year, $1,000 a year, or even $500 a year. That's something that studies after studies show employees remember that. I, for instance, a former place I worked, they gave us $600 a year to use on anything fitness related. Here I am 5-6 years later talking about it on a webinar. That I remembered that a lot more than if they just increased my salary by $500. And they weren't strict about what I use. Like, you could use it for shoes or a health club membership or whatever. That's your decision. But again, to me, that's a benefit that if you offer that, you can start using that for recruiting. Your technicians are going to tell other people they went to school with that, you know, hey, we get $1,000 a year to use whatever tools we want, and they're ours, they're not the shop's. But if you plan it out, you can figure out, can I as a shop afford $50 a month for each technician, so $600 a year? Can I afford more than that, less than that? Again, every place is different, but if you offer anything, you're going to be so much further ahead of most shops that we see. I would say right now, most places don't offer anything, but that is changing and we're seeing more and more. So I think if right now you implemented a program, you would be ahead of the game and you can use that for recruiting. My prediction is in a year or 2 years, you're going to be behind if you're not offering anything. I think it's going to be pretty standard if it's not already. It is changing pretty quickly, and Scott probably has more examples of that. But those would be the kind of categories I would see. Like I said, Travis, their example where you're basically giving an interest-free loan. The second example is you just buy them up front and you tie it to them staying for a while. The third one is just give it a yearly allowance. I will cheat and add one more. I saw Craig, I forget his last name, commented in the chat that they offer $200 per month if they hit a goal. That's a cool way. I think there's a video probably from Craig on Shop Talk that I saw this morning too. That's one I hadn't seen before, but I like the creativity there of if the team hits a goal, now you're giving everyone instead of, or in addition to bringing in lunch or whatever, you're giving them, you know, $200 to spend on a tool, or, you know, 100. Again, don't get caught up by the amount and think, oh, I can't afford that. If you can't afford 200, I bet you can afford 50 or 25 or something. Anyway, I'm rambling here, Jay, but I kind of wanted to lay out the 3 or 4 examples of types, because you can get creative all day long on the type of amounts, how long you have to stay for, what happens if they leave. But in my opinion, most things fit into those 3 or 4 categories I just went through.
I had a mentor once tell me that everything's just a math problem, right? And I think the way
Yep.
that you laid that out, if you can make a business case for it and be able to actually dive into your numbers and justify it, you know, I think when you look across the country and the amount of money that's going into signing bonuses right now, and this could be a nice alternative to that, to where there are potentially some tax benefits. Of course, go talk to your local accountant, but I think being able to actually understand that piece and know at a local level what that means to you, and if there are opportunities out there to be able to go and do that. Now, when we talk about this, Travis, a little scary, like as far as putting a program in place where a shop is actually buying the tools, or do you see any benefits in a program like that?
It all depends. Again, we don't do it to everyone, and it has to be the right person. So our return on investment in a way is a huge positive. So we've seen multiple times where we used it, where at the times that we use this program, that it works out for the best, and it allows those people to kind of just get entry, just kind of get started in the career path. And then during that time of them paying that off to us, they are trying to figure out, okay, kind of after year 1 or year 2, okay, I kind of need these tools. I mean, after being in the field for a while, it would be nice if I had this. And it's not, oh, I have to have this. It's more it'd be nice. I can see where I can, being flat rate, I can save some time if I had this tool. And that's where, then they can start doing that. But when you have somebody who's fresh out of college or fresh out of school, they're going to listen to their friends. They're going to listen to the tool truck. They're going to listen to whatever the case may be, and not listen to the person who's been doing it for many, many years, 30 years, and not listen to that tech. They're going to listen to their friends, and they're going to want the latest and greatest and the newest and everything else, because everybody does. And
yeah, Travis, just to add to your point there, I was that person. I was that young tech that wanted an 80 at the time. This is, mid 90s, late 90s. I wanted that $85 Mac screwdriver set that I still have to this day. Didn't operate any different than any other screwdriver, other than it didn't break, but it wasn't all that fancy. And I want to go to Scott here on something that I think is really, really important with regard to financial education for young people. And a lot of what we're talking about right now is probably geared more toward young people. I do want to touch on what this maybe looks like for a veteran technician who already has a lot of tools, maybe trying to buy specialty tools or something like that. But for right now, let's stay right here and talk about financial education and the responsibility of the shop. Should we be doing a better job at educating young people on what the ROI is on their tools, and really kind of almost build their own business case for buying tools? Scott, I'm curious of your opinion on the financial education side.
I think it's huge. I think it's overshadowed by, like a new technician comes out of school and they walk into a shop. The biggest thing that we see is people wanting to feel like they fit in and be taken seriously. Like, so as a brand new technician, you get to a shop and you've got all these veteran technicians, and they have these huge, Snap-on Epic series cabinets with side cabinets and stuff that probably cost, upwards of 20 grand just for the toolbox empty. The best veteran technicians are the ones that encourage the new technicians to almost not do what they did, right? Say, hey, listen, here's all that you need for the first 12 months. Here's all that you need as a lube tech. Here's all that you need as a C-level flat rate tech. And don't buy anything. Don't go on the truck, or don't call us. Don't buy anything until you have to borrow something twice. And then that's when you decide that, hey, I need that tool. Yes, there are tools that will make a technician more efficient. And I think that's what he was hitting on earlier when he talked about, hey, I'm transitioning from this level tech to the next level tech. And if I had this ratcheting wrench or this 3/8 flex head ratchet, if I could get this job done more efficiently. And obviously that's more production and throughput for the dealership, and then obviously more money in the technician's pockets if they're being billed at a flat rate. But yeah, the financial side of it is huge. I think that the best veteran technicians and the best dealerships are the ones that are getting in front of it when new technicians are hired. and saying, hey, listen, here's some best practices, and don't go into debt. Don't go into debt with a truck. I know. I told you I wouldn't plug us a whole bunch, but
This is a good spot to plug yourself.
One of the things that was brought up earlier is that this transition and listening to the technicians, and we created a pathway program which specifically listened to the industry, and we created a pathway for those transitions. So a basic, intermediate, and advanced set. Each set can be built upon itself. So if somebody starts out with a basic set, we actually sell an upgrade set to upgrade that to get them to the next level. But I'll just say that on it. But we listened to the industry, we listened to what was happening and trying to mitigate the excess or the redundancy of tools being purchased, or tools being purchased for a lot of money to be literally used once every 6 months.
Yeah, and I think that's a genuine concern because, and Mark, I'll get to you in just a second here, but one of the major concerns, and I've seen a few people put in the comments that the 50% off thing for a student, and that can be really dangerous because when the student thinks, oh no, I have to get all my tools at graduation time and take out a loan to buy these tools, and then you don't actually buy the right tools, or you're buying some fancy toolbox that is not going to produce anything. I think that's where a lot of people get themselves into trouble, and it's heartbreaking because they buy stuff that they might use once or twice in the lifetime of their career, and it definitely is heartbreaking. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, well, your point about the 50% off, I think, I could be wrong, Scott can say in a second, but I think you guys do that a little differently where you extend that time period out. I thought I saw that on your site, but maybe I'm wrong. But you had mentioned, and I'll let you follow up on that. I'm curious to know about those programs at the 3 different levels. I don't think that's too much of a Sonic commercial or anything. I think we're all here today to hear different examples of how to structure plans. So I personally am curious to hear of that, and I'm sure there are takeaways, whether it's Sonic or not. But Jay, I don't want to take over anything, but I'd be curious to hear a couple minutes of that.
Same here.
Well, and I actually been taking notes here. Wanted to address a couple things. I know that Thomas a few minutes ago asked about the warranty on it. I believe we have the best warranty hands down in the industry. The only way that a truck is going to beat us if you break a tool and the truck shows up like the next day or something, or that same day. But to answer your question, Thomas, it's a lifetime warranty on the tools. Your phone. This is your phone's your tool truck with us. So if you break something of ours, you literally take a picture of it. The process might take you 90 seconds from your phone. You don't need a proof of purchase for it. So you break it, you take a picture, submit it through the website right from your phone, and within 24 hours, you have a new tool coming to you. But it is a lifetime warranty. To address the 50% part of it, and also the extension on the discount. So our student discounts 35% versus a Snap-on or Matco, which tends to be 50 to 60% based on specific tools. Ours is 35% across the board. Ironically, our retail price tends to align with like a Snap-on or a Matco student price. So we're already at our retail is already at their student price. So 35% sounds less than 50%, but when you do the math after actually getting a quote, our list price tends to be with their student price, and that's only a byproduct of the fact that we are the manufacturer and we don't have trucks that are out there marking the tools up. But yes, we do extend because we're not competing with trucks. I'm using Snap-on as the example. They're probably the best known brand right now in the U.S. market, but you have Snap-on, the manufacturer, Snap-on Industrial, and that's who deals with the schools and the school discounts. And you have Snap-on, the franchisees, the guys who own the trucks out there. So they're technically competing with each other. The trucks don't want you to buy tools when you're in school. They want you to buy tools and you get a job and you start your career. They want you to go on the truck to buy the tools. Because we don't have that competition, we extended our student program for technicians 90 days beyond, or for students 90 days beyond graduation. So you can graduate, figure out where you're going to go to work, like if you're going to go to work for a Honda dealership versus a Chrysler dealership. And there may be some tools that you need at Toyota or Honda or Chrysler that may be a little bit different, from each other. We let you figure out where you're going to go You have 90 days to do that, and then still come back in and buy tools at the student discount.
It's impressive. And I think, again, not a commercial for Sonic, but if you do get a chance to go look at their stuff, it's good quality stuff. And it's has the nice foam inserts. It makes it really easy to do inventory, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But some really great things there. Now, we've talked about that starter set. And before we kind of go further into that, I want to ask about the veteran technicians. Travis, as far as getting a veteran technician or using it as a recruiting tool or even a retention tool, right? I think sometimes there's that opportunity to have it as a retention tool. Do you see opportunities out there to put something together to really take advantage of that?
Well, Kendall has a program where it actually applies to every technician, and for recruiting, we have a lot of different recruiting and incentives for technicians. There's a number of them that we do, as far as efficiency bonuses to just tenure bonuses, and then there's another bonus where you chip in and we chip in more, and then at the end of the year you get pretty much a nice fat check at the end of the year. So it all depends on you and the technician. So we per se don't have something involving tools, but we do have recruiting techniques for technician bonuses that they can spend on whatever they want. It's not limited to tools. So if they want to use that for vacations and something to be with the family, because at the end of the day, family's first. And so if you want to, do something for your family and be with your family and use that money that you work your butt off to get, then by all means you can do it. You can use your money however you shall want to. So if that's for tools, then they can buy tools.
Mark, how do you balance that between offering it for anything you want? Because I do think there's attractiveness from an employee standpoint in that regard to actually putting together a structured program for that's specific to tools.
I think both are great. That's a decision. I don't think every shop, every dealer should be exactly the same. I think the most important thing is to not just rely on those 6 dangerous words in business. That's the way we've always done it. And just because you haven't had a tool program in the past or any other program doesn't mean you shouldn't have one. I think hopefully one of the takeaways today is, or we'll use this as an example for your existing technicians, what could you afford? I think too many times people either look at, well, we haven't had in the past, so we're not going to do it now, or $2,000 a year for everybody, that's going to cost me more than I can afford. Well, what can you afford? Can you add 250? Can you add 500? Honestly, I think your team better than we do. Your culture better than we do. But every year at least, but I'd say even every quarter, I think you should have someone on your team questioning and saying, like, can we actually do something a little different? Can we get creative? It's getting more competitive to not only recruit, but to keep our people. You're going to fall behind if you don't just think a little differently. So that's probably not your answer, Jay. I like it being directed, at least part of it, towards tools, because that's so important. And honestly, it helps the shop turn more hours themselves if you get the right tools. But to Travis's point too, if someone already has everything they need, I don't want that person buying something just to buy something. If they could use it for a vacation, that's better too. Plus, whatever you come up with, you're probably not Microsoft or this huge corporate company. You can probably be pretty flexible, and I don't want to say take it on case by case basis, but if you look at, we can allocate $800 a year. We prefer it for tools, but if you have a reason to use it for something else, a kid gets sick or whatever, what's stopping you from letting them do that? You run your businesses, or you can make a case for whoever does run your business to do that.
What if you're in that middle manager type of role where you've got to almost sell a program to executives and trying to get buy-in from that executive level, because I think in order to do that, that's a significant investment in some cases if you're hiring a lot of technicians. What is the business case there that you go to the executive level with? Mark, you're shaking your head, so I'll start with you.
Yeah. Well, I think first at your individual level, it's an opportunity for you to, if you come up with a program like this, or at least get the ball rolling, it's an opportunity to make you look good. And you're thinking of the company. You're not going to do this for charity or anything. Like, that's going to make your company more competitive. So that's what I would, you want to think of the company first, but it does help you as an individual if you're the one questioning and bringing up ideas like this. Number two, just like buying a new piece of equipment or investing in anything else, you have to justify why you want to do it. Some of it is common sense and it's hard to put numbers towards it. Clearly, everyone on this call knows it's hard to recruit and retain technicians. If you offer a program versus you don't, you're probably in a better spot. Can I quantify exactly how many more techs you're going to recruit because of that? No. But common sense tells me that that helps more. Talk to your employees. You'll get great feedback for them. And then also, someone made the comment earlier, it might have been in the chat, of it does help the shop too, not just from recruiting and retention. If you're using tools that aren't really perfect for the job, I'm guessing you're not turning as many hours, or if you're always having to borrow tools and things like that, it just takes up time. So I know we all love our ROI calculators that can save exactly this many dollars by implementing it. I don't think this one's in that category where you're going to come up with that magic number, but you can still present a business case with valid benefits that anyone above you probably is pretty smart and can understand how that makes the shop look better.
Yeah, and if you are
and
trying
perform
to
better.
if you're trying to put together a business case for it, maybe look at what your some type of recruiting rate is right now, or what type of land rate once you actually get the applicant, and if they turn into an employee. Maybe look at a rate like that to be able to present and target it moving forward, or be able to look at it moving forward. If you put together a program for your existing technicians, maybe looking at retention rate and how often people are leaving. Another way to just kind of prove your case, I think, from a management standpoint or from an upper level management standpoint, that might be a lot of what they're looking at. So make sure you go prepared there. I do have a question from Christopher Moore, who says, when doing a yearly allowance, is it a reimbursement after they prove they spent the money on tools? Travis, do you have an answer for that?
I don't quite understand that.
So I think, and I don't want to put words in Christopher's mouth, but I'm thinking what he's saying is they don't get paid for the tools until after they provide a receipt for the actual tool.
I mean,
Jay, I think he's saying, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to try to clarify the question. I think he's asking, is it the tech buys the tools and then you reimburse it when you get a receipt, or you just give them the money and then they go spend it kind of wherever you want? And Travis, you can answer, but I think that's what he's asking.
Well, no, we buy the tools. So like if in our tool program that we do, again, for very selected people, we would go out and buy the tools. And if that brand requires you to have your own toolbox, we'll buy the toolbox, get the technician going, then they pay us out of their paycheck for that,
right,
for that loan. So the student doesn't need to show us receipts or anything like that. As far as reimbursing technicians, each Kendall dealership that there is has the factory specialized tools that you need to do the job. So if all those specialty tools that the manufacturer needs, we have them at the shop that all the technicians, can use. So that's already there at the dealership for the techs. But we're talking just the everyday, tools. And if they fall under that program and we're going to do that program for them, then we just go out and we buy the tools, and then they pay us back.
Scott, I mean, fairly similar in a lot of businesses or a lot of shops. What are you seeing out there in terms of this? Obviously, I think Mark laid out the four different types of plans that kind of everything falls into, but a lot of similarities to what Travis is saying.
I've literally seen every version of what Mark has said. Most recently, Alan Turner Auto Group, small 3 rooftop group. They just purchased the Hyundai dealership literally about 200 yards out this window. It's in front of me. He's a Florida group that came up here to Auburn, Alabama, and bought the Hyundai dealership. He implemented a program where he's actually purchasing an intermediate level set of tools from us for his Chevy dealership and a basic set for the Hyundai dealership. And we're talking the investment he's making for the Chevy dealership down in Florida is like $6,000, and that's at a discounted rate. Somebody earlier asked about, do we have a program? Does Sonic have a program where we discount this? We have programs that are built around volume and relationships. So we have relationships with automotive groups where because they're buying from us and they have agreed to buy from us, we offer discounts based on that. But so he implemented this about 6 months ago, and at all of his dealerships, and so far it's been hugely successful. And ironically, although he's the outlier right now, he's definitely the outlier here in Auburn, Alabama, but he's the outlier down in Pensacola, Florida as well. He's encouraging his competition to do the same. He stands out. Yeah, he stands out right now. So it is more attractive to go work for him. But he's literally communicating with the other owners and the other dealership groups out there, say, hey guys, let's all get on board and do this, so that his is big picture. He's trying to think about how do we encourage a kid in high school or even junior high school to consider being a technician as a path for them. And the only way we can do it is we start taking some of these roadblocks, these hurdles out of the way. And one of the biggest one is the idea that they've got to go and they've got to invest in their own tools. And what he's doing is he's doing a program, Mark, you mentioned this, where he has a capital expense up front. He's going to depreciate the tools and technically own the tools for a period of 2 years. But he is, instead of using the years or a timeline as the milestone, he's actually using certifications as a milestone, because his is technically an apprenticeship program. So you can come into work for Auburn Hyundai with no experience whatsoever. He has some early aptitude tests that he's doing to make sure that you've got some mechanical sense about you, some aptitude there. But you could technically pass all these things and get through the program in 12 months. And he's like, once you get to this program, or once you completed all these tasks and you pass an internal test, you're done. So that could be in 12 months, it could be in 24 months. And once they do that, the tools are theirs. So the $6,000 tool set is probably realistically closer to $7,000 or $8,000 retail cost. Toolbox and tools are 100% turned over to that technician, and they could leave the next day if they wanted to. He's found that if he can keep people for 12 months, he keeps them, because then they get buy-in, they get through some of the struggles that technicians have the first 6 to 12 months. Biggest one that he is avoiding is getting them onto a truck into some kind of a debt cycle where they have this constant $50 to $100 a week debt payment that has to happen. He wants them. In fact, in some cases, the trucks aren't allowed on his property except for before 7 a.m. and after 6 p.m. You know, the other side of that is keeping the technicians in the bay working on the vehicles and not in the truck looking at tools.
Yeah, and that we used to have when I was on the industry side, the tool trucks sign in when they came in and sign out when they left. So we had an idea. We had some ground rules around when they could go out there, and it can be a huge time suck. So I think that's really good advice. Mark, last question on this topic, and then we're going to move to tool insurance. You're a smart guy. If you're putting together a tool program for Mark's Auto, what would you start with? How would you start the thinking about it?
I mean, first, realistically, you have to look what you can afford. You'd love to just pay every tool in the world, but look at what is realistic that you can afford. Assuming you have what you charge customers, those rates in line, everything like that. And then the number of techs you have, and if I'm doing this for everybody or just starter people, I would give an allowance to all my techs. If I could afford $2,000 a year, I would. If I could afford $500, I would. But whatever I could afford, I would do that. That shows that we're reinvesting in them. I would make it annual. I'd probably try to keep it simple and say, just give us a receipt. We're not going to be too picky what it is, but at least show you did something with it related to what it was intended. That's my personal choice. The beauty of these, it can be whatever you want as long as it aligns to your interest. And then on the starter side, I absolutely would offer a starter kit program where I paid for the whole thing. I think you can easily tie that to 2, 3, 4 years of employment. Any longer than that, and is it really worth it, you know, for a couple $1,000s? But if you're tying it to them sticking around for 2 years or 3 years, and those starter kits, they're not going to break the bank. To me, that is well worth it. I mean, if you could tell someone you're going to bring this person on, they're going to stay for 2 or 3 years, will you pay $5,000 today for that? I'd be shocked if anyone said no, given the current environment. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I try to keep it simple. All the entry level ones, like Scott said, you're competing. If we're fortunate enough to get them to go into the trades in general, which is a big leap, but then once we get them there, and now compared to being a plumber, electrician, whatever, that you don't have to buy tools, I think you got to try to even the playing field a little bit. And the best way to do that is to offer them the tools up front, but tie it to their employment.
A great answer. There's a great question from our friend Suzette Harrison. Suzette, how are you doing? She asks, these are all great ideas for new technicians, but how do you keep senior techs happy when they see new techs getting tools? And I think this is a valid point in general, because if you know, I started in the industry 20 years ago and I'm a really good tech, and I see these new techs getting all these incentives. I think it's a lot of the same principle of paying a new tech more money than the tech that you've already got in the shop at the same skill level. I think there's some great concern there. I know Javier Hernandez also commented on that. Make the program inclusive to everyone in the shop. Techs always want more tools anyways. I think that's a great point, Javier, and definitely one to think about when you're coming up with a plan. How do you make sure you take care of your veteran techs, the ones that have gotten you where you are? I think it's always important to keep them front of mind. So great question, Suzette. I want to get into insurance. This is a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart, not insurance as a whole, but tool insurance. I had a few years back gone to a shop in northern Wisconsin that had burned to the ground. The technicians were not aware that the shop did not have insurance on their tools, and it resulted in kind of a mess, right? And so what I want to talk about is really the steps of making sure you're protected, making sure your team's protected. We talked about that at the top, where we want to protect our teams in the case of a potential disaster. Mark, from an insurance standpoint, what is the first step when it comes to trying to figure out, do I have coverage? What should I be telling the techs? You know, that kind of thing.
This one's simple. Talk to your agent. Every state's different. Every policy's different. I don't know all the answers. I used to actually own part of an insurance agency, and I still don't know all the answers. Talk to your agent. They're going to know. Find out. Ask them specifically. Tools that I don't own, employees of mine own, are housed in my building. Use your example, Jay. If that burns down, are those covered? And if your agent needs to be able to get you an answer to that, and show in there your policy where it is covered. If it's not covered, find out how to get it covered. How much extra would it be? It's probably not that much. And then worst case scenario, if there's just no way you can get it covered, I'd probably talk to a different agent and shop that around a little bit. But I think you have a responsibility to let your team know that they should look at individual tool insurance. It's a 5-minute Google search. We can send some out after this of some nationwide tool insurance programs. It's not that costly. And maybe our marketing team listening will take a note of that. We can send some links in that. But that's the order I would go. Find out if you're covered. If you're not covered, find out what it would cost to be covered. It's probably not that much more expensive. Worst case, you have to tell your team if they're not covered and show them how they could get covered. It's not a great conversation, but think of how terrible you'll feel if you're the example Jay had. And not only is your place of employment burned to the ground, but that $40,000 I've spent over the last 15 years I have nothing now. Like that is a cautionary tale for everyone that should be avoided.
Yeah, 100%. Travis, do you bring in insurance agents, or I know back from my time in industry, we'd always have I think a yearly or an annual kind of insurance review where the insurance agent would come in and go through the latest insurance is probably more focused on health insurance, that kind of thing. But do you guys ever talk about tool insurance or really how people are covered, or do you think they got a pretty good sense of where they're at?
I actually have no idea the answer to that question.
I don't think you're alone.
So, I mean, that is an amazing, thing to bring up, and it's something that I'm going to look at and look into. So I know the answer after we're done with this, but I don't know the answer to that question.
That's what this is all about, right? We're trying
Yeah.
to learn here and trying to get better as a community. And I think the fact that this is going to make you go look at that is a testament to bringing people together and talking about stuff, because that could really have a big impact on somebody at some point. Scott, anything you'd want to add to the insurance side of things?
I have seen that get brought up. Ironically, it's been a lot of dealerships and groups in California where you have minimum wage laws there that affect the mindset of the dealership owning the tools versus the technician. And one of the things that was brought up in a meeting that I had was a dealership who was looking at their insurance premium for tools, and by going with a lower priced tool, they were actually able to lower their premium. So they did have an insurance program that covered tools. And obviously, I know that I recall somewhat of the story of a dealership having some kind of devastation or catastrophic event, and I'll let you get into that with what happened with the folks who own tools. But I know it exists. I have had it get brought up in conversations we've had with some of our relationships with automotive groups and dealerships. I think it's an interesting topic, because I don't think that really anybody would even think to ask a dealership, hey, do you have insurance that covers my tools in the case of something happening? And obviously I know you've got a story to share with that, but it would be a question if I was a technician. Right now technicians have a lot of leverage. They're in a position of leverage here, and I think it would be a good question for every technician going into a dealership or transitioning from one to another. I know that poaching is happening. A lot of poaching is happening for master technicians right now and new technicians. So if you're going to work for somebody else, I might want to ask them, hey, do you guys have insurance to cover tools, and what does that coverage look like?
I just had a really good conversation with a tech earlier this week and asked him that same question. He said the same thing that Travis did, which is, I don't know, I haven't asked. And I said, well, that should be a pretty important piece. That's a pretty big investment that you've got sitting on in that box, and making sure that you're adequately covered is huge. One of the issues in that, and we're running a little short on time, so I'll try to keep it a little brief, but is being able to inventory tools. And one of the things that I think is important to insurance is actually knowing what you have. Scott, you guys are experts at inventory control and being able to make sure things are in the right places, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we hit that nail on the head for sure as a company and as a mission behind this idea of efficiency. Curtis Hockman really early on in the chat had brought up a question about missing tools. And I think one of the struggles, and I know we have recruiters on here, we may have some service managers and stuff outside of Travis obviously on here. So one of the concerns with a dealership starting to go down the path of owning the tools is now it's another asset to manage. And it's not just a simple asset like a 100 tire balancer or something. You're talking a tool set with 200, 400, 600 pieces of tools in it, and how easy it is for a bit socket or a wrench or a screwdriver to, pieces to slowly go missing over time. With the foam shadowing that we offer, and there's other companies that offer foam shadowing. So the foam shadowing part of it, whether it's ours or somebody else's, should be like an imperative piece of the dealership owning tools, because it literally mitigates 90% of the time to inventory tools. You can have a tool set and I've done this experiment with students. I've done this experiment with Auburn Hyundai across the street when they started doing this tool program. I showed them how easy it is for the shop foreman, whoever they want to designate to be responsible for the inventory on a weekly basis. The shop foreman over there took about 35 seconds for him to inventory a 400-piece set of tools. You open the drawer up and you can immediately identify what's missing. So the way that they do it is they keep a clipboard, because again, the shop owns the tools until the technician completes the program. So while they own them, they do a weekly inventory, and if there's anything missing, the shop foreman will mark it off on the sheet on the clipboard, and the technician has basically a week or two to figure out where it went. And if they can't find it, then replace it. And we created a program where we discount that replacement. We haven't had to do it yet. I think that David, the service manager over there, told me it takes their shop foreman about 5 minutes each week to run through the 3 apprentice boxes and inventory that. So yeah, it's a huge part of it. And obviously foam shadowing mitigates a lot of that time and headache.
Well, that just makes it easier. I know even if you're not using the Sonic alternative, there are, Kaizen foam packages out there. There's things that you can do to implement that. But Mark, one of the things we've talked about a lot is what's easy to do is easy not to do. And I think inventory is one of those things where there's just not a lot of people that maybe have adequate inventory or up-to-date inventory, and wanted to get your thoughts on that side.
I mean, you have to do it, whether it's insured by you or the technician. The insurance company, if a disaster happens and you file a claim, you got to have something to show. If you've never done it, it's going to suck the first time. There's no way around it unless you have all the inserts you're talking about. But I would say take that hour, whatever it takes, to jot it down. You don't have to have all your old receipts or anything. It's literally just a listing of what it is. With today, everyone has a cell phone. I would take a photo of all of it too. That could be all it is. But then weekly is great. I hadn't heard that before. But at least once or twice a year, you should be making sure, or quarterly, something that your number, that everything's where it should be. It's not the fun part, but it's just something you have to do. You're running a business. It's not a game here.
Yeah, and I think if nothing else, like our conversation with Travis earlier, if you don't have a process in place to inventory tools, or you're not educating your techs on the fact that they should inventory their tools. I know, again, back to my time in industry, we had a great administrative person who, she was on those people like every month, every 6 months, whatever it was, she was on the technicians. Get me your inventory. I'll hold on to it and make sure it's in a safe place in the event of something bad that happens. So I think inventory is fairly straightforward and obvious as to why we need to do it. Let's just do a better job at it as an industry. Lastly, I did want to kind of roll with a slide of takeaways and really be able to look at some things that you can take back to your shops as a result of this conversation. And as we do this, I'll run through the slides, we'll go through the takeaways, and then we'll kind of wish everybody well on their day. So let me share this. When we look at this, a few key takeaways here, and I think Mark alluded to it early, which is, instead of just dismissing a tool allowance, create a plan and see if you can do it. Mark talked about just putting some thought into it and doing the math behind it and really understanding it, rather than just saying, that we're not going to do it. We're not going to offer this benefit. Mark, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. I know that that's something that you talk about a lot.
Yeah, I'd say just don't take the excuses everyone has, like, oh, my boss will never go for that, or what do we do for a dealership, the other employees who aren't techs? Well, you know what? They don't have to invest thousands of dollars of their own money, so things maybe should be a little different. But just go through the process at least. I think 90% of people on here are probably like, yeah, we need to do a little better job of this, or we could do a better job of that, and then you'll go on with your day and you'll get busy doing something else. I think the key is just to start. At least, like the slide saying, put something together, try to get it approved. You might do the math and realize you just can't afford anything, but at least you're going through the exercise. Just start and do something. If you took the time to sit through this hour, I think it's worth another hour just to at least look into to see what could we do. And then we'll decide later once we have a little more facts to when we see what that looks like. So just start, basically, I guess is what I'd say, in putting together something.
A little plug for Tech Mission. That's going to be very much the focus of what we're doing on Tech Mission in October, is really talking about the execution side of things. We talked a lot about offering a set of starter tools to a tech. It's a fairly small investment for what you're getting out of it. Different types of ideas of what you can do. Scott was generous enough to join us from Sonic to talk through their program a little bit. I think it's a great program. I've talked with dealerships that have really, really liked it, but it really is maybe taking some of that financial burden off of a technician. I think it's still kind of weird to me, even though I grew up in the industry, that there's a profession where you have to show up and supply all of your own tools. And so I think being able to look at that and kind of take a pulse of that, right? And I know somebody had put in the comments, and I totally agree, is that there are techs, including myself at one point, that love to buy their own tools, that love their own brand. And so being able to work with them and understand what it is that they're looking for in a program, I think is good. Mark had the great point about the depreciation of tools and transferring it to a tech from shop ownership. That should be a non-taxable event for the tech, but make sure you go talk to your accountant. Make sure you go understand that for your state, what you need to do. We do have a little teaser here. Oh yeah, sorry.
Real
Mark.
quick, Jay, can I, sorry, I meant to update. As you can tell from the tone of these bullets, I wrote these, and I meant to ask Scott for an example of the starter kit. So I don't want people thinking it's $5,000. It might be more, it might be less. I put that as a placeholder. Sorry, I don't know if that's the real cost, but I do want to point that out there. That was just an example of, I'm sure you have kits that are all across the board in pricing, but I don't want to mislead anyone there with that pricing.
Good call. One thing while you're talking, any plug for the WrenchWay Jumpstart program?
Yeah, when we talk to shops and leaders, a lot of these things, tool related, retention bonus, signing bonus, people want to do something. They just don't know where to get started. They don't know what paperwork they need. So we're rolling up the sleeves and looking into that, and we're going to announce a program that gives you all the forms you need to get employees signed, the examples on how to structure it, what to do if someone leaves, and if you need to collect from them. Just a lot of good stuff and tools. This was an area that we felt is important. The intentions are good for most of our clients, but some of the paperwork, they didn't know where to get started if you do it as a loan or things like that. So we have a cool program coming out that we'll announce in October at Technician for that.
All right, we're excited about that. And then,
Jay,
oh yeah, sorry, Scott, go ahead.
You want me to address that money amount that Mark had brought up? I'll give you an example. So our basic automotive set's a 255-piece set in shadowed foam. Every tool is laser etched, so there's a serial number on that each tool that ties that tool to that toolbox. And we do that because we have a lot of dealerships who buy multiple boxes. That way you keep the tools from being taken from one box to another. So that set of tools, foam, laser etched, and a 8-drawer toolbox, 4 drawers of tools, 4 drawers empty for expansion. Retail is $53.65. We rarely have anybody who pays that because we always have groups and dealerships that are going into relationships with us where they're buying in volume or agreeing to buy X amount of boxes over a period of time. So we have tiered discounts based on volume.
Where can you find that on your website?
Just go into tools and toolboxes, and you can either look at it through the industry, like automotive, aviation, education, or just go into tools and toolboxes on the homepage there. You'll see a breakdown of basic, intermediate, advanced, and then even under basic, you have a breakdown of different types of sets. And depending on what toolbox you choose, it'll throw you out a price there.
It really is a great program, and I've told Scott this in the past. I'm a big fan of that. Thank you for that information, Scott. A couple more takeaways: look into tool insurance. Make sure you know what you've got. Make sure you know if you're covered or not, or if your team is covered or not. Make sure to have those conversations. Don't let that one go to the back burner. Have that conversation so you know. That is so important. You never know what's going to happen. That's why we have insurance in the first place, right? So make sure you're adequately covered. I think that's when we leave here, if nothing else, please go make sure that you do that. It's devastating to see the other side of that. With that, I want to thank our guests. It was it's a pleasure to talk about this with the three of you, and really enjoyed our time today. Hopefully we gave the attendees some good stuff to go home with, hopefully some good tangible stuff to go home with. So a pleasure having the three of you, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.